Today, we are talking about the war on intuition. And we have with us, I am Pastor Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium, a Taino Arawak. We have Reverend Paul Casey, Healing Arts. Reverend Danny Johnson, our numerologist. And what we're focusing on here today is the reality of the predicament that we're in currently. We have been colonized. We have the patriarchy ruling over everything. We have been stripped from our roots and our real connection to our spirituality, to our intuition. And we've been brainwashed into a system of believing that tapping back into our roots is going to be more like devil worship or mental illness, and that it's punishable. And of course, that keeps the power in the hands of the people in authority who want to keep it there. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that war against tapping in, against acknowledging your intuitive intelligence, your spirituality, your true faith, whatever that might be. And I want to look at a couple different aspects here before I open this up to Reverend Danny and Reverend Paul. I do want to invite you guys to post in the comment section any questions or comments you may have. Our Sunday services are interactive, and I would encourage you to also give this a thumbs up, follow. We appreciate donations, and feel free to type in your prayer or healing requests at this time also. Right, so the biggest way, one of the biggest ways that I see people being forced away, having their faith stolen from them, is through the medical and psychiatric fields. And this comes by taking through the APA and the DSM-5 the categories of what is considered a mental illness. This comes through the process of mislabeling a lot of people who are tapping into their intuition or having a spiritual awakening, mislabeling them as psychotic and diagnosing them with a range of things, from manic depression, to schizophrenia, to more mild things even, which isn't so mild all the time, like ADHD. And we want to understand that they even, have termed this magical thinking. So the minute you go in to a therapist, a psychiatrist, a doctor who is not open-minded, who does not have their own faith outside the Christian system, the Catholic Church, whatever they believe is the ultimate God. Their God is okay, but yours is not. When you go to one of these people and you get misdiagnosed with some kind of disorder or, mental illness, or heaven forbid, you're psychotic, you are going to get medicated. Sometimes you're institutionalized. The medications cut you off and make you numb so that you're really not healing. You're also not connecting anymore very well to your intuition, to your spirits. And so you really end up in a very dangerous zone. And I'm not here to prescribe or diagnose. I believe in science. I just believe that science needs to continue to progress and that we need to acknowledge it. And I understand that in the science, and all the doctors will say, we can't prove or disprove intuition. Well, then don't act like you can. And when we adopt whatever mislabel it is that they're slapping on us, we run the risk of creating more and more of those exact disorders we want to avoid that they're claiming we have. Because if we ignore our intuition, it builds and it builds and it builds as energy in our bodies, and it makes us sick. bipolar, ADHD-like symptoms, anxiety disorders, depression, a million different things, headaches, irritable bowel syndrome. So we make ourselves sick by detaching. They are creating the problem. They're forcing you to detach. They're forcing you to essentially get sick. And then they're medicating that and saying that you are either lying about being intuitive or you're psychotic. And so a couple different things I want you guys to keep in mind if you are dealing with an unfortunate therapist, psychiatrist, doctor, whatever the case is. Keep in mind that we have a for-profit medical system here in the States. It is a benefit to them for you to remain ill. Don't forget you've been indoctrinated from birth by the Western European world. And so this system is also based on rich white men, or at the very least, white men. So if you're not one of those, you need to be realistic that the majority of this doesn't even pertain to you. It has also not allowed any kind of real look into intuition. They refuse. Spirituality, they refuse. And so the sciences that our ancestors understood, the sciences that worked, have been completely negated and wiped out by that colonization. We did a free mini class if you want to learn more about this last week. So here on YouTube at Ask Ivy, go to the playlist. The mini class last week was called Psychology, Therapy, and Intuition. How are they intertwined? All right. I want to talk briefly, too, on the church. Okay, so the church has been forced on people more than people have come to the one almighty true God. This has been, it was this or die. It was this or suffer whatever horrible fate they had for you. So just because your parents are connected to the church, or even your grandparents are connected to the church, if it's always felt wrong to you, it could be because it was forced. Originally that's not what your belief system would have been. So I would encourage everyone to really look into their roots, their heritage. And if you don't find much there, just be open. You don't have to be a part of any tribe. You don't have to know exactly where you came from, your DNA. You don't have to have a group that initiates you in. Spirit is spirit. Spirit is always there. Your ancestors are always trying to communicate with you. It is between you and them. Don't worry about the outside world. If you can't find where you fit, allow spirit to guide you. But the church has been designed, and I'm talking about, Christianity for the most part here, but any religion that has taken over other groups of people, they want the ultimate authority to be in their hands. So they benefit a lot like, doctors and big pharma would from disconnecting you from your intuition, disconnecting you from your spirituality, cutting you off from your ancestors and spirits and telling you that you're crazy, you're going to be punished. Now in church, they're going to tell you you're going to go to hell, that it's devil worship, and that the only way for you to connect with God is to go to them or to do it their way. So there's a lot of money in that. There's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of ability to keep you under the boot and brainwash you into submission, especially when that's the only community you've ever known. It's scary to leave your community. And if you step out, they've got thousands and millions of other people ready to step up and punish you. So you need to think outside the box. I also just want to remind everyone who has gotten caught up in, more of the Christian church denominations, that even though we're told that tapping into our intuition is demonic, it's punishable, we're going to hell, we're witches, it's Satan worship, and all of this. We are also needing to be realistic that prayer is supposed to be a connection with the Holy Spirit, which is inner. Okay, so that alone doesn't make sense. And we know that there were trainings in the books of Solomon in the Old Testament for prophets, for psychics, for mediums. You're supposed to be 40 years old. You were supposed to go through, several years of this intensive training to make sure that your ethical code was good, your discernment was good. Well, when those books were stripped, and we have one version of it left, it's all chopped up and it's in an English, copy. It's just gone. It's just gone. And when we think about why that may have been removed, obviously money, but in the New Testament, it was easy to take the psychics and the mediums and to place them with rapists and murderers and thieves and devil worshippers, and to completely wipe out all the history that we had so that that ultimate power stayed in the hands of the higher ups in the system. And that is so sad to know that we're still holding on to this concept of the Holy Spirit in such a shallow way, and that we have destroyed the language between a human being and the Holy Spirit in the process. Very sad. So keep these things in mind. It may help you to deal with the guilt too, especially if your family's really embedded. I would also say this, we see so much paranoia come out of the church. This negative, toxic, egotistical, fear-based, control-mongering attitude. And it just spews negativity out onto everyone. Your ancestors aren't about that. Your spirit isn't about that. Your soul isn't about that. There's no truth in this. There's no fear in God. There's no ego in intuition and connection with the universe. It doesn't work that way. You need to understand that if the basis of you being there is fear, it's broken. Okay, so let's be smart about this. Again, I think that we need to periodically step back and look at how serious the patriarchy problem is, how serious colonization is. And we need to take back what's ours. And that journey begins with you. And if it begins alone, we're here. There are millions and millions of other people around the world who are doing the same thing right now. We've had enough. And we want to reconnect. And if you're not willing to take that step in the journey, then you're really feeding the problem. You're supporting it by being passive. Okay. So I had someone reach out to me yesterday and said, oh, well, I don't want to seem crazy, so I can't talk to anybody about this. I get that every day, and it is the biggest slap in the face. Oh, I came to you, Ivy, because everyone else will think I'm crazy if I talk the way you talk. You're crazy. You seem crazy, right? Is that what they're saying to me? And I've been to countless doctors because I was sent from the time I was 5. They would send me off to these doctors who have misdiagnosed me, one after another, after another, after another, have medicated me, one kind of pill after another, after another, after another, until I was hallucinating and my liver was shutting down. They want that buck sometimes. They don't want accuracy. And, I had 2 who apologized to me. I had a psychiatrist and a therapist who came back and said, I'm really sorry. I keep misdiagnosing you, but if you could be patient, we want to look a little more. And while I appreciate that, I went in there all the time telling them that I was having visions of 9/11, saved my own rear end, got out of there in time. Visions of places I had never been before. All kinds of premonitions for me, for others that were accurate, that were happening. And they dismissed every single one, telling me I was either lying or I was confused or I must have been there and I forgot when I was a child or, they had an excuse for everything. And so if they're not listening to you, you need to start listening to your own self. Okay, so I want to open this up. Paul, Danny, you guys want to take over? I also want to just remind you guys, feel free to post your questions and comments here. Our Sunday services are interactive, okay, and your healing requests and prayer requests as well.
Excuse me. Ivy, I appreciate you sharing and saying how spirit is spirit, because spirit is spirit no matter where it is. And with this, in terms of numerology, we're in the year of 5, and 5 is that number for, I know in the academy, it like represents change. And in numerology, it represents freedom and liberation. And there is, most recently, like within the past year and a half or so, I remember having a conversation with a couple of pastors, Christian pastors, about in the book, the Apocrypha. It's the book with the Songs of Solomon and the Book of Judith, and realizing the Book of Judith is basically like scripture. It's feminism basically in scripture. And it's like, it is just absolutely incredible. The thing is, realizing that there are Christian pastors who recognize and see the how problematic it is that intuition be separated from spirit, and that how spirit, there's a pastor I was speaking with, and she said, Jesus was a mystic. Jesus was a mystic, and that's the way that it is. And this is it allows for this moment of resistance, even among people who have been ordained in Christianity, for them to be able to say, okay, listen, these might be our beliefs, but would Jesus actually condemn what is happening right now? I mean, how many times have we seen things happen, and we've seen actions being justified by scripture or religion, and the response being, would Jesus actually believe in this? I personally believe Jesus would be at the table waiting for a reading. That's how I feel. And He was a mystic, he believed in it. And everyone who was an outcast, Jesus not only befriended, but entrusted. So that's, I firmly believe, and having my own experience, even with intuition and outside of Christianity, I just really feel like that would be the case. And in colonization, the thing is, I appreciate you bringing up colonization, because that literally, with colonization in Christianity and Catholicism, they have been forced upon so many groups of people. And I think specifically, I know with time, like seeing and reading about Columbus, like how just problematic, and with enslaved Africans, with my ancestors, thinking about how when Africans were kidnapped and stolen from the shores of West Africa and taken to the Americas, in Ifa, in Santeria, there are several saints or orishas, and one of the saints, her name is Yemaya, she is said to have traveled with the slave ships from West Africa to the Americas. And then because the name Yemaya is like mother of the fishes, so she is the mother of all mothers. So because she loved her children so much, she refused to abandon them. So what she did was she allowed herself to be transformed into a form that slave owners would accept. So Yemaya, and she's known as like Yemoja in the Caribbean, she allowed for herself to be renamed like Our Lady of Regla, I believe, and Our Lady of Navigators, and even in certain respects, the Virgin Mary, and as that benevolent mother. So it's just, when you said spirit is spirit, that is absolutely so true. And these ancient, wonderful, loving spirits and saints that have loved their children since the beginning of time have allowed for themselves to be adapted so that those who they love would never be alone. So even in the midst of this colonization, we have our sacred spirits with us, like you said, who refuse to leave us. And it's very real and it's very true. And when there is a coming, like almost like a return, I love when you were posting books about Taino, like returning and being and connecting with who we are. It is then often demonized. And it's just, well, let's remember where this came from. Let's remember the origin of this. And yes, believing in and wholeheartedly embracing whatever ideology or religion that one has. But it is okay to still hold multiple truths, have your faith, but then be realistic about where it came from and how it came about and the suffering that occurred as a result of it. So those are we're allowed to do all of it and hold all of it.
That's right. We are allowed to do all of it and hold all of it and be open to all of it. And it was our design to come to Earth as spirits having a human experience, and without our intuition, our psychic ability, our mediumistic ability, our empathic ability, which we all have innately, all of us. It's not a gift. Yes, some people have more of it, and if you feed it, you'll be more gifted than the guy next to you who never uses it, but it's there in all of us. So we literally came here prepared to use it. And it is the most valuable thing we have as human beings. And so if that could be stripped from us, then we are the ultimate slaves. And that's where we are right now. And we have got to wake up and tap in. Tune out and tune in. Paul, what were you going to say?
Well, I think, to something that, I don't know if it's going to be something coming up Wednesday, but when we were talking last week, someone had said the term magical thinking.
Well, yeah, we didn't explain Wednesday. So Wednesday, we have a free mini class here on YouTube called The War on Intuition. This is sort of a taste of our Sunday service here, but we're going to be getting into it more in depth on Wednesday here on YouTube. Yeah.
But that made me think, it's like, who's the judge of that, right? Like, you could be this doctor and someone comes in and says, oh, I go to church, I pray, I do this, I tithe, I do all these church things. And they're like, you're great. You're a great person. And then someone's like, oh, I go see a medium, I, connect with spirit. And then, all of a sudden you're magical, you're like, you're crazy. And it's just like, depends, like, it's all perspective and it's horrible. But even when, like, I know we're talking like Tainos and West Africans, and like we can even look at, say, like the Greeks and the Romans with going to see the oracle or like, auguries on bird livers. I mean, at that point too, it was still like a one or two people doing it, but it was still mystical. It was still like the practice to do is like, okay, like let's figure this out. Let's predict the future. And then it just kind of all got swept away, and I think there's no small coincidence, on purpose. It now, like, the Vatican is where it is because, like, this was, Roman, like, it kind of replaced everything here that was this old way of thinking, and it just took over. And it's unfortunate that all these beautiful old practices of, say, Druids and everybody there, too, as well, just got swept away. Everybody got caught up in it and just forced out. And, the further out you go, it's, so hard to reach back, and that, people won't say, I think because it's so distant, it's like, it doesn't seem like it's part of someone's past. It just seems like fantastic, like I can say, hey, like if I were to get into like some sort of Irish stuff here, it's like so far, it seems so far back, but it's like, why is it, it's like, it's zero. It's timeless. Like spirit is timeless. So why can't I just tap into it now? And like people would just say, you're crazy. Because that's not how you're raised. And like, great, like I don't want to believe in how I was raised because that's what is chunked off and keeping us stuck, And it's like you were saying, it's like power and control, and it stinks because it's like you're just trying to get back to what makes you comfortable, And like, yeah, that's an awful thing. Is like, a therapist would say, well, you should be comfortable. You should be comfortable, and they try to make you feel as true to yourself as you can be, but then when you do find it, if it doesn't jive with what they want, it's I don't know. I just very frustrated.
Well, it's comfortable. It's healthy, and it's full of hope. When we're cut off from the universe, our ancestors, our spirituality, our intuition, we're in a state of despair, different levels of despair, but we really are in a state of dysfunction and despair. We are not on path. And if you're here on earth and you're not on path, meaning you're not doing what you came to earth to do, and this is the bare minimum, connecting is the bare minimum. That's the beginning of the journey, the beginning of the journey. So if you're not doing that, you are susceptible to all kinds of negative forces and energy. And it means that you're wasting your time here. You know, I always tell my clients when they say, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? What's my purpose? They need to first understand that they should be tapping in with their intuition, because it's a whole journey. Every time the road, you know, twists and turns, or there's a fork in the road, you know, there's a new part of the path you're supposed to go on. You need to be in touch to understand how to navigate this. And so we, you know, pass away not doing our work. A lot of people well into old age on their deathbeds, never accomplished anything. And then after, from the spirit world, they're like, wow, I got it all wrong, you know, and they're going to reincarnate and have to do it all over again. It's like, why are we doing this? Fear. That's it. We have been so trained. And I think of cults and how the cult mentality is really what keeps everybody there in regards to that fear, that level of community, acceptance, belonging. People don't want to have to go out into the world and recreate some kind of a tribe for themselves. And often by the time they're stuck in a situation like that, they don't even know who they are. They don't really have a sense of identity. They're not good at anything. They're not skilled at all the things that they need to be skilled at. It's an entrapment system, and it works. And that's everywhere. It's not just what we label as cults. You know, I had, there was a doctor too, I just want to say on this note, and then we're going to get to people's questions and comments and you guys, your prayer requests. But there was a therapist, and after everything I've been through, I trust very few. But there are some really good therapists out there, and we really do need them. And I was watching this guy on YouTube, and I ended up going down a rabbit hole with his material. He was so open-minded in so many ways. He talked about prison reform. He talked about the mental health crisis and how that leads to, you know, the toxic prison system and reincarcerating over and over again, and how people with disabilities are so disenfranchised and harassed. And I mean, he went into all of these marginalized groups, and I would watch one video after another and be like, he's doing it again. He's doing it again. Look at him. You know, he has a real open-minded attitude. And when he would talk about the DSM, he would talk about it being fluid and how more therapists need to think in an open-minded way. And then he did a video on psychics and was so nasty, was so mean, accusing, and lied in it. Like, everything he ever talked about was about facts, proof, you know, or taking what we know and we've proven and being open-minded with it. The harsh attitude that came out of him when he spoke on psychics and that magical thinking and how we're psychotic and how we're out to take people's money and how ridiculous it is that 25% of the population believes in psychics. There's a reason for that, because he's psychic, you're psychic, I'm psychic, we're all psychic, right? And he just tore it up. And I said, big fat thumbs down, shame on you for being so progressive, supposedly. You know, this was very revealing of your true character. And it was funny because his videos right now are about how he just got had by another YouTuber who scammed him. And he's trying to ask the public's opinion on how he should handle it, if he should stay open-minded. I said, your intuition is so garbage that you need to go outside. That's karma right there. That's karma right there. He doesn't even know. And other therapists were on there saying, you don't see that you're being conned. Now it's public. You know, you're losing following over this. And it's like, bam. Okay, let's be careful who we go to for help. And if they're not advocating for change and betterment in and outside of the office, I would be leery. Okay. Did you guys have anything else to add to that?
I wanted to say how much I appreciate Paul lifting up the oracle in the oracles in ancient Greece, because the oracles. What's interesting is, like, maybe a few months after I had started training in mediumship with Ivy, I kept hearing, watch this documentary on the oracles of Delphi, and it was just so. I loved it. I loved every second of it, and hearing how there were, oh gosh, I mean, from every walk of life in ancient Egypt, within ancient Greece, who would make all kind of decisions and would decide to go to war. They would decide all kind of things, but they would not make a move until they saw the oracle. Like, literally, they would not make a move. Like, the most powerful of whomever that might be in, like the Spartans. Well, they actually won again. Well, that's okay. But that's okay. But they still respected the oracles.
Well,
and
part two.
right. Yeah. And also just wanted to lift up how multiple beliefs, we can hold multiple beliefs at the same time. We very often we're like forced to believe or thought to believe that we have to choose one or the other, and especially sometimes by institutions, and that's just not the case. Not at all. I'll just share a very brief story about when this was a year before, and I know that everything, especially the couple of years before being trained, entering into training with Ivy, was preparation for it. Because when thinking about when I went to Cuba, and that was when I was told by a couple of priests in Santeria that that Yamaya watches over me, and I came back to the States, and I remember thinking to myself and asking God, okay, how do I make sense of this? How do I allow for both to? How do I make sense of all of it together and all of it to mesh? And I literally felt and saw Jesus, like with a smile, open his arms, take a step back. And that was his way of saying, there is room for her here. There is room for all of them here. And so that just showed me how inaccurate the pushback is, because in reality, they make space for each other when they're all based and grounded in love. And all of it is, and literally every single day, Yamaya and my mother Oshun, they affirm my intuition, they affirm my mediumship every single day. And they make it known. And when preparing for mediumship readings, I call in Jesus. And I remember in training how you describe when there is a reading that is really, that you just really need to connect in that moment. And you're very connected, but how you invite Jesus in and how clear the messaging comes through. So it is definitely completely all connected. And what's interesting too is when talking about Yamaya, like in Ireland, in Irish culture, her name is Bridget, and still like the mother of the waters. So these literally throughout the world, these beautiful, motherly, divine feminine energies follow us and are with us everywhere we are. And when this coming home of this process, I am just encourage and affirm anyone who might be on that journey in returning to self in that way, while still holding multiple truths and still embracing spirit in whatever way feels right for them. But it is real. They are real.
It is real. It is everywhere. Yes. Different forms, and enough for everybody. Plenty for everyone. It's not a competition. Or you kind of miss the boat, it's not what it is. I love it. Do we have questions and comments? You want to read these off?
Yeah, well, I wanted to throw one more comment in.
Okay.
With what you said with the YouTube guy and Danny's last comment here made me, I think I said this to you afterwards. It's like this guy who's kind of knocking psychics and people who believe in them, I would think probably has, multiple copies of Aristotle's works on his shelf, and probably talks about how great of a mind he was. And, Aristotle was in that time, he would go to the oracle. He would pray to Zeus and all these things that this guy would scoff at now. But because he could say it's this time thing. He'd be like, well, that was back then. And it's like, well, why does that make it any better? People are still the exact same. Genetically the same. Like, why? What would change? Other than the fact that now we can make stuff. But that's those people who had these beliefs that made this possible. That took the steps that were able to do all this because they trusted and had faith and were able to do so. And it's funny that they could just kind of slam their old
cherry pick.
Yeah, cherry pick. Yeah, and it's like it doesn't work that way.
Well, and the greatest scientists of all time knew universal law. They understood God. They understood the universe. They knew, but we don't talk about that. Well, All right. So what do we have going on here with our people?
We had a few comments here when we're talking about the misdiagnoses. Deirdre on TikTok, it said this happened to her son many times. Jill says that for this one up here, it's in here. Watching what they do in their children is sickening. Almost every child my kid knows, including herself, have doctors saying that they have ADHD, bipolar, personality disorders, etc. And most I see are highly intuitive, but doctors are over-medicating them at an early age and making parents feel guilty if they don't. My daughter is highly empathic, not ADHD. Doctors laughed in her face when she said, my mom can teach me to breathe and deal with anxiety. They rolled their eyes and tried to have me leave the room.
Oh, yes. Heaven forbid. You should teach your child to self-maintain, to get control of their energy, to get control of their mind. What are we raising up here? But at 14 in New York State, they can get their own medication without therapy, without parental consent, addictive medications. You call your child's doctor and they have a hotline for the ADHD refill meds. It is out of control. Big Pharma has got them hooked. So by the time they're 15 years old, they're addicted. They're addicted for life. They're detached. And again, therapy not required. And people will say, oh, no, I work here in New York State. Therapy is required. Do more research on whether or not that's being implemented and why some of us hear that it's required, some of us hear that it isn't. It isn't happening. This is the most toxic place I could have ever imagined that we would have gotten to as a society as we vulture our children into the system like this and just eat them up alive. And the ADHD misdiagnoses in the school is a huge part of that. You guys are just so right on, because you could be labeled as a parental abuser or neglector for not forcing them onto, some of these medications. And even when they're not working, they're not taking them off. Oh, well, it's not working. It's not helping. That's because it's a misdiagnosis. That's because if we don't get meditation and empathic awareness and things like this into the school system, if we don't start teaching these children to self-maintain, we're not going to get anywhere. But we don't have adults who know how to self-maintain. My empathic awareness training, where I teach therapists, I teach educators, children. We have all different versions of it up on the website. Paul, you could put that in the comments there. That took 8 years for me to push just to get into a few school systems and universities. And it helps everyone. But, we're so far gone at this point. And once COVID hit, I feel like it's just been a huge setback, because we were getting yoga in, we were getting meditation in, we were getting those safe rooms in the schools, for students to, instead of go off to the corner of a room or be disruptive, to go calm down and kind of reconnect. And then my empathic was getting in there, but it's like now I feel like we have to sort of start all over again. And I see more and more kids every day being put rampant. Can't sit still. You can't learn through the new system. You can't learn through, the computer system at home with COVID, all these changes. Then you have a disorder, and parents are, worried. They're worried that they're going to be in trouble if they don't do it. And it's a real problem. Yeah.
And Jill should be celebrated for being a parent willing to not only listen to, but be engaged with her child in this way, because being willing to find alternatives to being on medication, like that takes time and that takes care. And that takes a lot of dedication. And for doctors to laugh in her face is just completely unacceptable.
Yes. Well, I hope you put up a big public review. And listen, people, I mean, I think this is where we need to be. I think we need to shout from the rooftops this injustice. You know, if we don't start speaking out, it's not like you don't have opportunity all the time to do it. Start speaking out. You know, stop labeling our spirits as being crazy too. That would help a lot. Well, this is crazy. Well, I don't want to say this out loud, you know. No, it isn't. Let's normalize intuition and let's get bold about doing it every single day in every way that we can. We have other questions, comments here?
Yeah, on a similar note here, Damage is Not Broken said that her daughter was put out of school because she wouldn't medicate her.
There you go. Yep. And it's tricky too. If you have a lazy parent, if you're co-parenting, you know, with someone who would rather not do the work, you know, they'll get them on the meds, and then you've got parental consent issues because you got to have, you know, it's just hard. And so it happens. And I think that we just need to keep the faith that at least, you know, there's good parenting going on with you and you're continuing to do what you need to do. And for those of us who aren't having the greatest results, you know, there's time. Keep doing your research. You're here today. There's time. Learn more and help those kids do what comes naturally to them. Help for your own self to, you know, bring the healing that comes naturally to you. We don't have to go out here. We just have to go in here. It's not as complicated as we're told it is. It's certainly not as complicated as being medicated, okay, and having no breakthroughs ever.
On the plus side, we have one here from Liz who says, I feel so blessed that my therapist left the clinical practice and now combines healing with his medical understanding. He totally supports my mediumship training.
I love that.
So that's fantastic.
I had a lady reach out to me today who said, I appreciate this service you're doing tonight. She was on Instagram and she said, I myself am a therapist and I have had to let several of the people who work under me go because when clients would come in and say that they were having a spiritual experience, especially in regards to the awakening process, they mislabeled them as psychotic. And so she fired them. And she said that she also was let go from a couple jobs because she spoke up against the authority in that system who were also mislabeling. So there are good ones out there.
You know, Andrea had said that this timing here was, you're talking about everything I've been wondering about lately, headaches, ADD, anxiety, the church. I had so many questions, I don't know where to start. I just need relief sometimes.
Go to the playlist here on YouTube and Ask Ivy. Hit the playlist and watch the free mini classes. Yeah.
Yeah, and here something from Natalka says, I was always confused by the phrase wrath of God. Like, if God is all loving, how could he be wrathful? Especially because that's a human trait. It's a funny but very true point of how much, you know, like, I think that all, like, I feel like with the ancients, like the Greeks and Romans, you know, I'm going to talk about them because I studied them, but like how they saw them is like humans and they just attributed them exactly how they were. But it's funny because on the other end, they weren't like punishable things like sin so much. You could go to Tartarus, but it's like, it's strange how they would let them get away with the things that they themselves couldn't get away with, you know?
That's right.
It's very weird, but how that continued.
Mm-hmm. Well, anything negative that could be used as a tool for fear and submission. Yep. All right. I don't know if we have another one or if you're still looking. Okay. But so if you guys want to post your prayer and healing requests now. If you didn't already do so, please do. We also ask for donations at this time, greatly appreciated. And we are going to wrap up with any closing statements here and then get on to our prayer and healing part of the service and wrap it up for the day. Did you guys want to add anything else to this upon closing?
No, I think this was just a really great sermon, and I'm so glad that it reached people the way that it did, the way that it had.
Yeah, I really do too. And I think that the timing on all of this is really impeccable. Spirit had shown to me 4 or 5 months ago, maybe, that I was supposed to be on this topic right about this time. So I had it all scheduled in, but I really didn't, I didn't have any current super dynamic, new, eye-opening experiences to necessarily bring to the sermon, to the classes on it. It was old stuff. It was stuff I had dealt with from childhood, stuff you see in society every day. And then I had several really outrageous experiences, like the gentleman I was following on YouTube, for example. And it has just been so incredibly eye-opening that sometimes you could get into a rhythm of believing what you believe and fighting for what you fight for. And it almost becomes systematic. You're like a robot, like you're just so comfortable in it. And then you get this huge wake up call, reminding you of how big the problem really is. And, another thing that had happened even this week, we bought an 1800s funeral home, an old Victorian historical, building, and we just finally got the keys the other day. So I go down there, we're going to renovate the place and restore it, and everything's still in there from when it was a funeral home. It's been sitting vacant for 10 years. It's absolutely beautiful. We're super excited. And Spirit told me, open the front doors. So we have these 2 glass doors in the front of it. And I opened them, and Spirit said, open them wider all the way and watch what happens. So we put the door stoppers in, we opened it wide, and within minutes, people were coming in and they wanted to see the place, and, they just couldn't believe. And, someone had bought it and they were dying. Everyone was always curious what was in there all this time. And it was a great day. It was a great experience, but, there was one of the people who came was a woman who just kept asking questions about, what it's going to be. And I explained to her, I said, well, I'm a pastor. I said, I have a, church based on intuition. And, she just kept the whole time just scowling, looked constipated and very nervous. And I don't know. And I heard something about we have one God and I don't know. And then she would insert, there's always God has a plan. Well, God has a plan and we have to be careful. I said, get the heck out of here. Get that with all this toxicity and negativity, all these good people coming in here today. You know what I mean? All this positivity, people so excited to see a spiritual center open in their town, opening it up also to the Tainos in the town. There's a huge Taino population there. Everyone was excited. And you get that one religious individual who thinks they know better, who just rains on everyone's parade. And it is such a reminder of how disconnected we can be and how righteous we think we are in that. How we think we have the ultimate authority. We had better be careful, and be careful around people like that, because that negativity is sticky. You got to cleanse that out, detach. Yeah. So some interesting examples lately, for sure. We have any prayer and healing requests here? Okay.
Emojis are funny. Ms. Charlie was talking about the later came and she said that one apple, little apple emoji.
There's always the one.
It's enough to crack you up. Yes, we do. So let's get into those. It's damaged, not broken. To ask for some comfort in her son's journey. So let's say a prayer for damage for her son and family. That up. Get the healing they need. Natalka Please surround me with white light and give me the strength not to repeat old toxic traits. Talka, pray for your strength to move forward, move onward. Playing that one. Shauna is looking for healing from the stress to not let everything with her divorce get to her. Put that up for Shauna. It's all good. Is looking for healing for her daughter, father, and husband. It's this up for her and her family. Get the healing they need.
I just want to add in also for everyone out there, I ask the Spirit that you help them to hear you more clearly, that their ancestors and their guides, their angels are working with them to encourage them to be bold enough to go in, to be introspective, to connect with Spirit through their higher minds, to channel Spirit, to be willing to experience the truth instead of looking outside themselves.
I'd also like to lift up everyone who is on their journey, who know that they are, not only that they are loved, but they are in a God-driven, divine place. Keep going. Let nothing and no one take you off of your journey, because the most important are the ones who we might not see, but who are ever present with us.
Including the cat who's throwing up on the carpet.
Oh, so sorry.
Well, let's send Mama some healing. And healing for whoever she probably just ate outside. So, yes, that's what that noise is, folks. My cat just came in from outside. Yeah, and I just want to say amen to that. You know, the way Danny said that, don't let anyone take you off your journey. Because, listen, I mean, this is a war. It just is. And the minute you decide to get on path, a million arrows are going to come at you. And you have to remember that you have that shield on. Okay. You were born with it. You are backed. Okay. And we support you and will continue to pray for you in your journeys. Be bold, people. I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being with us here for Sunday service. We will see you next week. Next week, we are talking about detaching and being less of an absorber, more of an observer, being able to view your life, including yourself, including your feelings and your thoughts, as this distant observer, to become more empowered and balanced and healthy, productive. It'll increase your prosperity. We're going to look at different ways to approach that, and you can find some tools that work for you, hopefully. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Spirit, and everyone for tuning in. Don't forget, if you want to look at a full list here of previous services, YouTube at Ask Ivy, in the playlist, Roots Revival, and anywhere you can get a podcast. Okay. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. This was so healing for me too. So thank you.
It was. I love this.
Yeah.